That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about The Batman. The sixth film, directed by Matt Reeves, released March 4th, 2022, courtesy of Warner Brothers. It's a highly anticipated reboot, rehash, blah, blah, blah of a franchise, a character we're all very familiar with.
The director?
Matt Reeves.
What else has he done?
He's done the last two Planet of the Apes films, one of which I know you have seen, Cloverfield, and the English language remake of Let Me In.
Let the Right One In.
Well, Let the Right One In is the original title. His remake is called Let Me In.
I've seen both.
Yeah.
And I like them.
Yeah, isn't Crowe...
Crowe's in the U.S.
Crowe,
version.
Grace Moretz, yeah.
English version. Okay, the basic story is Robert Pattinson is Batman now. And it's kind of the same every time we get a new Batman. Like, we get told the story of, like, how Bruce Wayne's parents died and now the Wayne Enterprises and he's a recluse in Gotham. But in this iteration, Bruce Wayne is kind of new to being Batman.
He's like 2 years in.
Okay, so of course there's a bad guy. The bad guy is the Riddler. Mm-hmm. And the Riddler is killing off political figures, trying to send a message. And the message is that Bruce Wayne's dad was affiliated with some other nefarious person, played by...
John Turturro, Carmine Falcone. Mm-hmm.
So what's his name, Bruce Wayne's dad?
Thomas Wayne.
Thomas Wayne and this Turturro man.
Falcone.
He had there was a reporter who was up to some no good stuff, and Bruce Wayne's dad asked Falcone to take care of it.
Because he was running for mayor. Mm-hmm.
But Falcone killed this man.
Yep.
So they kind of put that in their pocket. So the Riddler is trying to expose not only that, but sort of like general sort of corruption in Gotham.
Well, that scandal from 20 years ago, which culminated in, of course, Bruce Wayne's parents being murdered in front of him. And so there's this ambiguity about whether Falcone or his rival nemesis was involved. The rival nemesis was recently taken out by the new mayor, who's the first kill. And the Riddler is trying to unearth that a rat that's working somewhere in the underworld, in the mafia, was working in collusion with the mayor, the DA, the police commissioner, and are all taking a piece of the pie in this city renewal fund that's $1 billion that Thomas Wayne had created the 2 decades prior.
That's the corruption.
Yes.
Okay. So the main bad guy is the Riddler. There's also the Penguin. The Penguin is sort of peripheral, but he's connected to Falcone.
Yes.
Okay.
Played by Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell's the Penguin. Then we have Catwoman.
Mm-hmm. Selina Kyle.
Catwoman is the daughter of Falcone, but he doesn't know that.
Yes.
So her main thing is she's trying to find him. To connect with him.
Yes, he is aware of her as this beautiful young woman that goes to this club within a club. There's this major dance club venue, and within it is this mob-run portion where all these political figures go and take drugs and use women.
Okay.
So John Turturro is aware of her, but he doesn't know that he fathered her.
Okay. So, of course, Batman is able to defeat the Riddler, which results in the Riddler getting put in an insane asylum. It's in that asylum he meets Two-Face. This is at the very end, so we would presume that Two-Face will be involved in the next movie.
Yes, and that the Penguin will be as well, because Penguin's really kind of on the back burner here.
Falcone gets shot and killed by the Riddler. So now that Falcone's gone, the Penguin is now the main bad guy, so maybe he'll show up in the next movie. And then Catwoman, she and Batman have a little thing going on. So towards the end, she tells him why don't we go off together? But as she's proposing that, he gets a little bat signal and has to jet off.
She goes, I forgot you're already taken.
So then they go their separate ways. The end.
There you go, yeah.
Okay. I did not watch this movie because I have COVID, so I couldn't go to the screening. But So you explained a couple of well, overall, you did like this film.
I did really like this film.
Okay. And then, just quickly, so I don't forget, you mentioned that in the film, he's not called Batman. She's not called Catwoman.
Yeah, there are no supernatural elements, which I really liked, and it kind of harkens back to the '60s television series where it's more of these are characters acting on a suggestion, a metaphorical suggestion, if you will. Penguin kind of looks like a penguin because he's this lumpy, misshapen man. She likes stray cats and kind of has this lithe strut to her being, and there's no anthropomorphization, as in, what we're used to from going back to Tim Burton, if you will, of like Catwoman and Penguin. So I did really like that because it makes it seem a lot more tangible. Robert Pattinson, I thought it does a good job. He's probably the first actor playing Batman that I preferred him in the bat suit as opposed to as his kind of withdrawn, reclusive self. So that being said, the Batman voice isn't so pronounced as in, Christian Bale's growl, which I found a bit laughable. I think Paul Dano is well cast as the Riddler. It's a far cry, obviously, from Jim Carrey playing that character. But Paul Dano... So the movie's 3 hours long, and I think the first 2 hours are really well done. It's like a neo-noir from the 1990s that has that serial killer vibe. Some really good characterization. I think Peter Craig, whose previous screen credits I haven't loved, including the Mockingjay films and the Hunger Games and that Sandra Bullock movie, The Unforgivable. So my hopes were kind of up in the air, but I think there's some really good character work in the screenplay. The last hour kind of tends to drag because that's when we have to get to the inevitable and really tie this back into Bruce Wayne's past. I like that Reeves sidesteps a lot of exposition because we really dumped right into the fact that he's been doing this kind of as an experiment for 2 years, and he's not calling himself Batman. In the first melee, somebody asks, "Who the hell are you?" And he said, "I'm Vengeance," because he's acting out of this anger tied up in how his parents were slain. Blah, blah, blah. And of course he comes to a certain epiphany about how that's the wrong way to do things and becomes kind of, the Dark Knight, this savior. Everybody, I can't find, there was nothing wrong with anybody in this. Jeffrey Wright is playing the police lieutenant that kind of likes Batman and kind of leads him onto all of these crime scenes. Andy Serkis, who played Caesar, of course, in the Planet of the Apes films, is Alfred. He doesn't have as much to do. Peter Sarsgaard is here as the DA who gets murdered. He's, his usual sinister self. I like John Turturro. But going back to Paul Dano, I think in that third hour of the film, Paul Dano, did you see There Will Be Blood? I know you saw Prisoners, which you liked.
Who's he?
He's the one that gets blamed for the killings but didn't really do it.
I know Hugh Jackman.
Okay.
Jake Gyllenhaal. Who's the special guy in the van?
Paul Dano.
Oh, I don't remember what he looks like, though.
Okay. Anyway, he has Little Miss Sunshine. Anything? Okay. He has a certain way about him where he goes into hysteria real quick, and I felt like that was a bit distracting. I liked it when we saw less of him and he was in that Riddler mask. There's that obligatory Gotham orphanage just sitting there open that they all raid, that they go make an appearance at, and there's a film footage of Thomas Wayne being projected on the wall, which I thought was silly. And the way that the Riddler describes the orphanage is like it's in some kind of forlorn Dickensian universe. I do want to spend a moment on Catwoman.
Okay.
Selina Kyle, as played by Zoe Kravitz, who I think is beautiful. I'm a fan of both of her parents. I think she doesn't... I don't watch a lot of theatrical trailers, but I happened to see this one, and my reaction to the trailer, if you remember, was this should be called The Batman and the Catwoman.
Because she's featured predominantly in the trailer. But
right.
in the film...
But in the film, she comes and goes. She's a bit more on the periphery. So this really is and should be called The Batman, I guess.
How does she compare to Halle Berry's Catwoman?
That's what I'm going to get to. So she's the third woman of color to play Catwoman. And do you remember, no one will ever live up to Eartha Kitt. Okay? No one. Both inside and outside of Catwoman as a screen presence, Eartha Kitt you know, that weirdness that she had about her. Anyhow, do you know Eartha was not the first Catwoman?
No.
It was Julie Newmar.
Yeah.
And Julie Newmar.
I know that from Tu Wong Fu.
Yes, and my problem with Tu Wong Fu and its kind of white gay male slant is Patrick Swayze's character saying the only Catwoman and kind of discounting Eartha Kitt, which Eartha Kitt blows everyone out of the water. Anyway, Julie Newmar was replaced by Eartha Kitt because there was kind of a chemistry between Batman and Catwoman, and we couldn't have a hero loving or being attracted to a villain. So they replaced her with a black woman because there's no way that there could be any kind of chemistry between those two. So that's the history of that casting. And of course, Halle Berry played Catwoman in that offshoot film, which is not very good. Kravitz is just fine, I think, as Selina Kyle. I'm curious to see where it goes, because I'm sure that she's going to have... but I like that. In all the Christopher Nolan films, you know, there are villains, and then, of course, there's the female love interest. And this is collapsing that love interest even more than in Batman Returns between Michael Keaton and Michelle Pfeiffer. And I think it really dispels kind of all those intersections of a hero loving a villain or a woman of color, all gone out the window. So I do really like that. Also, this film isn't really... This is kind of an anti-hero superhero film. Okay. If you will. And, you know, because Batman always kind of existed in that gray zone, I think. And I'm talking like I'm a really big fan. I'm really not. But it's just tiring to have to... It's like Frankenstein. We have to regurgitate all these different parts, and every filmmaker that gets a chance to make these films kind of reconstitutes it for themselves. And it's a little bit tiring. I think I love the tone and mood of this film, and I think it would have been that much more powerful if it had been something that was completely original and standalone. I wish we had the time and energy and threw this kind of money at original properties rather than just these constant franchise reboots. But if this is the variant of what we have to live with, I much prefer something like this, which, if you like Joker, I think is a decent film. I didn't absolutely love it, but that film has a similar energy to it, where Gotham City is, in this version, Gotham City plays like Manhattan with Seattle weather patterns. Oh, and it was shot by Greig Fraser, who recently lends Dune. I think it looks great. It's a great soundtrack. Overall, I was happy with it, but I don't think it's a good film. I think people are already showering it with praise, but I definitely think you should see it in the theater, much to the chagrin of Bob the Drag Queen. But, yeah.
What does that mean?
Oh, he posted something about how haven't we evolved beyond having to see things in the theater because he doesn't want to go to the theater.
Then don't go, girl.
That's my thought as well. Yeah, I don't know. Is there anybody else you want to talk about in this?
Nope. What would you give it?
I'd give it 3.5 out of 5.
Okay. That's all?
Do you remember whose shirt this belonged to originally?
My mom?
This is a Norwood Young shirt.
Oh, that's right. No, she gave you a Batman shirt, a different kind.
Yes.
But you got this from an estate sale at Norwood Young's.
Yes.
And I got this shirt from Derek from his channel, so thank you. Listen to our podcast. Bye.
Bye.